Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Yeonni. I'm losing my voice. It's been quite a week for many different reasons. I'm sure you guys already know. The elections have happened. Just got the results this morning. I have a lot of feelings right now, but I really wanted to sit down and make a video. I wanted to check in with you guys about where I am in my social work career, in my social work journey. It's so fascinating that our little, I was about to say community, but it's so weird hearing it coming out of my own mouth because I always hear other YouTubers speak this way, but we do have 20,000 plus subscribers here. You guys have, for some reason, decided to subscribe to my channel. Okay, my cats are yelling at each other, I guess. Don't mind them, but what am I even saying? We have 20,000 plus subscribers here. We do have a little community here in the corner of the internet, and I know a lot of you guys have found me through my social work videos. A lot of you guys find my Instagram through my YouTube channel and message me about like your own journeys, being in school as a mental health professional, wanting to be a therapist, what's the different routes, what is it like, blah, 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 all these important things. I'm not saying blah, blah, blah to trivialize it. I'm saying there's a lot of DMs that I get about these topics. So I felt like it was really important to sit down and just be honest and authentic with you guys with where I am in my social work journey right now. And before I can get into where I am now, I kind of need to go a little bit, kind of rewind a little bit into where the past, is it like 2 years? 3 years has been, 2.5, 3 years has been since I graduated from NYU Silver School of Social Work, and how my journey as a social worker has kind of shaped out to lead to where I am right now. So let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about how my journey has progressed as a social worker ever since graduating from grad school in 2018. And yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So I have my coffee here, I have some leftover Halloween candy here, grab a snack, we're gonna sit down and just chat. This is not a scripted video by whatsoever means. I just wanted it to be casual, like you're sitting across from me and we're just checking in with each other. So yeah, let's get straight into the check-in. So first off, I graduated grad school in 2018 from NYU. It was a really exciting time. I felt like the world was going to open its doors to me. 2018 was just a pretty pivotal year in my life, at least. So I graduated from grad school. I took the licensing exam. I passed and became an officially registered social worker in the state of New York, which was really exciting. I got married that year, which was pretty insane. I went to Japan for my honeymoon. I started my first official job. 2018 was a very busy year, that's for sure. It was a very busy year. But focusing in on the career part, right after graduating from grad school, I actually got married right after I graduated. I tested for the exam, and then my plan was to go get married in August, and then I would have a month or two off for the honeymoon and just to move into our new place and get settled in the new whole like married life thing. And this was all possible because in my last few months of grad school, I had actually already started interviewing at different places, and I was able to do that because I took my licensing exam during my last semester of grad school. This needs to be a whole entire another video. Let me know if you'd be interested in that in the comments. Like, you have to let me know. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd be interested in that. But in grad school, a lot of things pointed to the fact that it would make a lot of sense for me to take the licensing exam during my last semester. That way, by the time I'm out of grad school, I could potentially have a job offer already. And that's exactly what I did, and I was really, really lucky because I interviewed at this amazing place and I got a job offer in like May, so before I graduated. And the best thing was that the start date would be, I believe, September. So I already had like 3-4 months in between. I was like, perfect, like I could get married, do the whole honeymoon thing, get settled, da-da-da-da-da. So after coming back from the honeymoon, some administrative things kind of went awry at this new place that I had gotten my offer for, and essentially they had lost my interview, like they had lost record that they had hired me before in May. So that led to delays, which led to me starting my job in late October, like October 31st, so essentially November. I seem to have a pattern of starting jobs around this time of the year. Why is that? I don't know if that's a good pattern, but anyway. So this first job, I really wanted to work here because it was a really amazing agency that had really deep roots in the city of New York, in the communities of New York, and it had like a really great structure where from the get-go I knew how much I'd be getting paid, I knew that I'd be getting supervision, and it was very organized, which I really liked. The only difficult thing was that it kind of was structured like an internship where I would preface, this is the environment that I want to work in, these are the people I want to work with, and they would try their best to place me and like put me in those community places. So my first choice has and always was like working in a hospital environment, because that's how I got to know about social work, and I really wanted to be the part of like the liaison in the hospital environment, helping families out. But you know, life happens, and I ended up working in a dual diagnosis outpatient center. For those of you who might not know, dual diagnosis means a population that is struggling with both substance use disorders and mental health disorders, which is really prevalent in those struggling with substance use, that there is usually a secondary co-occurring diagnosis of a mental health disorder. When I got that placement, at first, you know, I'm all about authenticity and honesty here. I was really nervous because I think now that I look back, it's kind of like the way I was raised, not like specifically the way I was raised by my parents per se, but by my culture and by society, and just this prevalent negative stigma against this population, and just misinformation and fear mongering, you know, and I'm being honest, I thought that way too. So I was really nervous starting this job, but because I believed in the vision of like this core agency and like the potential opportunities it could provide for me in my career later on, I knew I wanted to work here. And I worked at this job for 10 months, and this was still in New York, and it was the most rewarding job I've ever had. I mean, that makes it sound like I've had plenty of positions and 10s and 20 years of experience. I don't. I'm still, you know, pretty new in the field, being honest. But it was so rewarding because it was so challenging. Not only because it was my first job, but I had a really tough director, and she was like, it was like a boot camp where every document I'd write, I'd have to print it out, show it to her. She'd take a marker, mark up that this word isn't right, that isn't right, you should word it like this. Every single thing that I would like produce at this job, any document, any kind of email, she read through it first. And just being new and wanting to perform and do well, it was really nerve-wracking. However, I think this was a really great way to start off my career, because this director, she really enforced all the rules and policies. She's the type of person who would double check, triple check anything and make sure if you have 5 days to put in a note, get it done in 2, like no questions. And because of that, that's really helped me with my work ethics moving forward. And also talking about the population, because I work with such a marginalized population, I feel like I grew a lot as a clinician on not only doing a lot of self-reflecting, working on my own prejudice and the ignorance that I had when it comes to working in this field, but I feel like I've become an empathetic and compassionate clinician. My eyes were really opened at, first of all, how cold our world can be to certain populations, marginalized populations, but also how powerful, you know, compassion and respect for other persons can be. So this job was amazing. It was really great. But let me move forward into 10 months, why I quit this job. After I got married, you know, a marriage is like a partnership of sorts. My partner and I decided maybe it's time for us to venture out into the West Coast and try out San Francisco. I had never lived in a new city as like an adult. Before marriage, I lived in New Jersey most of the time because my school was there and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So we moved to San Francisco, and this next job was also fantastic. It also really honed in on what I was really passionate about, which being kitties. He's trying to break into the food cabinet. Sorry about that. We're just gonna have to continue. Oh my, what was I saying? It was during this transition where I was really honing in on what do I want out of my career as a social worker, as someone in this field. And I had always known, even going into the field, that I have such a heart for the Asian American population, and clearly I'm a bit biased. I am Asian American, but one of the main reasons why I came into this field is because I didn't see other people like me in this field. When we talk about marginalized, culturally diverse populations, there are certain populations represented more than others. So my solution to that was I want to join and I want to represent a group that I don't see. Like when I had requested an Asian American therapist in certain places, they don't have them, they don't exist. And being on both sides of the chair, where me being an Asian American clinician and not seeing any Asian patients, me being an Asian American person who is looking for some validity and comfort and solidarity with another Asian American, and being able to talk about mental health, that didn't exist, and it still is really taboo to talk about. Mental health issues are highly stigmatized in any society and culture, but especially in Asian culture. And talking about it is there's a plethora of just negative stigma and why you should never bring it up. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to tell people, hey, it's okay to talk about your mental health. You can talk about your mental health struggles with another Asian person without being judged. So that is what led to my next job, which was really perfect, to be honest. It was being a clinician and therapist at an Asian American focused agency in San Francisco. And it also worked out perfectly because it was the same population, dual diagnosis, and I had a lot of experience working with them. And also it was working with culturally diverse, marginalized populations who struggle with co-occurring disorders, who were also women. So I was like, this is amazing. I get to work with some amazing women, and it was such a great opportunity. I also learned a lot at that job. I was also able to, for the first time, feel really like I do know what I'm doing. Of course, I felt imposter syndrome quite a lot, which I think happens a lot in this field, but I felt very confident in the clinician that I was shaping up to be. I'm not saying like I'm perfect now, of course not. But I felt really confident in my skills and abilities, and me feeling like I'm doing this for the right reason and I feel like I can do it. Unfortunately, our time in San Francisco was cut short for various reasons. Before I go into that, one thing about this agency though that was really difficult for me and really kind of made me wonder if I could stay there long term was it was a community-based place, which most of these places are that I've worked in and interned in, but there were just not enough security and safety measures for the employees, and I actually experienced 2 to 3 life-threatening experiences while only working there for 6 months. I had the difficult thing, which I do not understand how this is possible, but our agency was located near a probation office where many people would come in and out, and our women at the clinic felt very unsafe. Not saying all people on probation are unsafe, you know what I mean. But it was already a very tense area, and then the probation office was next door, and our women are going in and out of there. It's a part of San Francisco that's not as it's not like the bougie San Francisco that you see in like the skyline. We're not there. I was not there, that's for sure. So one time, this guy who was allegedly, he was supposed to go into the probation office. He saw me, he followed me into our clinic, and he tried to do some sexual acts on me, but thankfully I was wearing a big backpack, so I won't go into detail there, but it was really unsafe. I was really scared. Second time, we had a patient that pulled out a knife on me, which was extremely terrifying. Third time, what was the third one? I can't think of it at this time, but the first time and the second time I made excuses saying these people are very ill and we're just trying to help them, and of course these agencies don't have the funding. But I also advocated for the safety of the staff at the clinic, and we were all really scared to work there, but nothing happened. Unfortunately, things were escalated. My boss tried her best to escalate it, but nothing. No security guard, no memo, nothing from the CEO about, I can't believe this happened, blah, 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 investigation report, no. So I already kind of had a feeling I wouldn't be able to stay at this job, because my number one thing when it comes to this work that I learned is that no one should have to compromise their own feeling of safety or their actual safety to do this job. we put ourselves already out there when it comes to our emotional and mental health. Therapy and being there emotionally and like mentally for certain populations in this field is really difficult. Vicarious trauma that I've talked about, where working with people who are traumatized is already difficult and so straining as it is. We should be able to feel safe in those environments. Any other workplace safety, there's like security guards, there's codes, but for whatever reason, I think in the field of social work, there's a lot of like kind of guilt tripping when clinicians try to speak out on like basic human rights and basic employee rights, like feeling safe when I go into the office. And I learned through my journey thus far that it was not okay to feel unsafe going into work. And if management does something about it, that's great. I'm not saying just quit because you don't feel safe. I'm not a quitter, of course. But I meant like bring it up to the supervisor, escalate it the best you can. How are they going to respond? And if your company doesn't respond, doesn't protect you, that's when you start making the tough decisions. And so I knew that I wouldn't be staying at this place long term, even though I did really enjoy working there. So I had been looking for other jobs and interviewing around the San Francisco area. And then some personal things happened in my life where I ended up realizing I was going to move to Seattle. A part of that I will take responsibility for because financially, I felt like it was really difficult to stay in the Bay Area long term at that time. Being a newly married couple, having just moved, both of us having gone to grad school, we didn't really get a chance to establish a firm like financial foundation. And the Bay Area was just so expensive. Most of our paychecks were just going into paying rent. So I knew financially, like, what are we gonna do? It was on the back of my mind. And then this other thing happened that I really wasn't happy about at the time. And that ended up in us moving to Seattle. So moved to Seattle. I don't have a job again. Coronavirus happens. This was all before Corona. Like, we were moving right before Corona got really bad. So we always talk about like, if we had known this was gonna happen, but you know, hindsight is, I don't wanna say 2020 anymore. That term, that phrase is just forever ruined now by this year, but hindsight is a lot more clear because you have all the information now. But yeah, we ended up moving here. I spoke at length about the difficulties of finding a job here, especially during coronavirus, especially in Washington. Something I want to make a video on is how social workers, the demand for social workers and the type of jobs and the demand for certain licensures in certain states. I have, not because I wanted to, but I have experience being a social worker in 3 states now. Well, 2 states, because I'm not a social worker here, which I'm gonna get into. But I applied for like 100 jobs at this point, and I've done interviews, and I'll get into that. I think that's definitely a video I need to make, but it was really hard. I felt really depressed. I really believe I went into like a pretty severe depression. I don't have any friends here. I don't have family here. I won't go into that. I've already made like a crying video on that. So it was a really difficult time. I felt really alone. I felt really like worthless. And as someone who's so passionate about my job and my career, it was a time of reflection as well, where I needed to realize I can't bank my entire worth on my career. That's just not healthy. Like, I should feel worthy and I should feel confident. Well, I mean, confidence comes and goes, but I should feel worthwhile as a human being, even when I don't have a job. So, you know, I always try to look at the flip side. Flip side of that really difficult period was that I was able to reflect a lot and engage in a lot of self-care, as a lot of social workers say. And now we are here. We're gonna talk about where I am now and the job that I have now. So after 6 months, half a year of job searching, I came across an opportunity to become a research coordinator at a university here. And you might be wondering, a research coordinator, what is that? Why would you do that? Why not a social work job? And let me tell you, like 95% of the jobs that I applied to, of like the hundreds of applications that I sent out, were social work ones. They were really difficult to find first anyway because of like job hiring freezes because of COVID. And I just feel like in Washington, there just seems to be less social work opportunities. It's just something I felt like. New York, there were quite a lot. San Francisco, I think it's because UCSF, like there's huge hospitals there. I felt like here job searching was a bit more difficult because the requirements of the social worker registration is actually more strict here than California and New York, which I was surprised by. So pretty much that was really difficult. And then I started thinking a lot about like my long-term goals. And if you have been here from day one, maybe you've seen my what is social work video with my weird hat that I was wearing. My long-term goal of having entered the mental health field is to become a psychologist. It always has been. My plan was to first become a social worker, get like that community hands-on experience, and not saying that if you go to a master's in psychology program you won't be able to do internships in mental health clinics, but I knew that even as a psychologist I wanted my own like values and the strength that I have as a psychologist to come from a more policy-based, like social justice background. So social work just made a lot of sense to me. I loved it, but I knew I wouldn't be a social worker forever. I knew that I would work so hard being a social worker, gather all the experiences I can possibly get, and eventually go back to school for a PhD in counseling psychology. So this job, when it came up, being honest with you, at the time I didn't even remember applying to this one because it was just buried in the masses of applications that I'd sent out. Losing my voice because I am talking so much today. What was I saying? Yeah. So when I got the call back, I wasn't really expecting much because I had already done 5 interviews and been kind of bait and switched, been told, you're not good enough, essentially. Been told, our listing actually is wrong and we want someone else, not you. It was pretty discouraging, let me say. But the interview went so well to the point that I could not believe my ears. And when I say that, it meant that this is a job that would be a perfect stepping stone to pursuing my dream of becoming a psychologist. And I never knew when would be the right time to shift from being a social worker and looking into school again. But this job really felt like this is the sign, because in case you don't know, in order to apply to grad school for PhD programs, especially for research-based programs like a PhD in psychology, having direct research experience is extremely helpful. If not, a lot of times people say it's required, because a PhD program is based in research, but also obviously treatment and things like that. Those are important. But that's the difference between a PhD and a PsyD. A PsyD is a degree that is more focused on like the treatment aspect, the clinical aspect of psychology, where you focus more on, I already said treatment. PhD, there is a lot of focus on academic research and treatment. And I just knew that with how I came into the field, I wanted to do research about, Asian American mental health, about the stigma, the destigmatization, and how we can reach out to more Asian American communities when it comes to mental health welfare, how it can be more accessible. And I'll go into that hopefully down the line in my future, but it just felt like the perfect next step. And it felt like the sign where this is the beginning of my PhD journey. And if it was up to me, I think total my social work experience, during grad school you have 2 full years of internships, so that's why I feel a little more confident about this decision. So after my 2 full years of internships, I worked a little less than 2 years as a social worker. If it were up to me, I wish I could have worked as a social worker a little longer. If it were up to me, my original plan was to get the clinical license, the LCSW, which you get after working in the field as a social worker for like 3,000 hours and all these requirements. But unfortunately, I realized because of the moving that I've done, I can't get that C. It's just not really possible, and the timeline doesn't really work well with my other goals in life. But you shift and you adjust to what life gives you. I would have liked to be a, yeonni LCSW PhD, but I'll get into this maybe in the future as well if you're interested. But being an LCSW opens up a lot of doors for you. It really, really does, which is why I wanted that. So sometimes I read in forums like LCSW PhD can be a bit like redundant and not necessary. Okay, my camera died, which means this video is getting way too long, so I'll try to wrap it up. So yeah, that is why I have worked a full first week now as a research coordinator at a behavioral health lab at a university, and I'm learning so much. It's definitely a shift because I'm not a clinician anymore. I think that's been the biggest change so far, which is I'm not focusing on treating the people that I'm working with anymore. It's about researching about them, studying them, and it's a little hard because like basically an example could be if I'm working with now they're called participants in research, so they're not patients anymore. When I'm working with a participant, I can ask, hey, have you experienced symptoms of like these symptoms of depression the past 2 weeks? And the participant says yes. That's it though. I can't go into trying to do CBT, DBT, motivational interviewing, and doing the therapeutic aspects of the work that I loved so much. It's more about gathering the data for this study, for it to be published, and for it to potentially shape policy and treatments for many more people in the long run. So I think I've already learned so much, and I can really see that I'm going to learn so much from this job, and that it's going to really help me with my PhD application, hopefully maybe in the next year or two. Fingers crossed, we'll see. It's really different, but I'm learning, trying to be patient with myself through the process. But that's where I am in my mental health field journey. I can't say that I'm a social worker anymore because that's not my title. But the cool thing is this lab really embraces me because of my social work training. I still am a registered social worker, so like if there's potential mental health crises going on in the lab with a participant, they call me in so I can help the participant, which is really cool. So it's not like I'm not a social worker anymore, but I'm a social worker who is conducting research at this time in my career, not really practicing and treating people per se. So I'm excited. And before I lose any more of my voice, and my chocolate's melting in my hand because I'm not eating it. And yeah, if you've made it through this video, kudos to you. Thank you. I hope this was a nice little check-in, and hopefully parts of my story could inspire you to check out different routes or try new things, like put in some new Google searches on your own journey. I don't know. But anyway, if you like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, hi, thank you for watching this super long video. Hello. I'm a mental health professional, social worker, researcher now, and I make these videos for fun on the weekends to inform, to educate, and just be a transparent person in this field who can maybe help you in your own journey. If you like the content that you see on my channel, please make sure to subscribe. That helps me quite a lot. It's really cool seeing this little channel grow. And yeah, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful rest of your Sunday, because I upload this on Sunday. And I'll see you in the next video next week. Bye!